Well, guys, this episode is kind of an occasion. This is episode 74 that we're recording right now, which means that it has been this is the 50th episode that Dave and I have done. So when I started doing the show with Dave, it was 24. Today is the 50th episode. So I wanted to raise a claw and toast.
Oh, well, hot damn.
To not just all of you amazing co-hosts, but all of our awesome listeners. And here's to another 50 and then another 50 after that. It's been a blast and a privilege and a pleasure.
That is so cool.
Salud.
Yeah. Happy 50.
Salud.
I don't know, did I ever tell you guys the story of when we started doing this? Like, because I mean, you guys know Dave and I were good friends before we were doing voices. We would just hang out at the bar and yell at each other about politics. And then when he wanted to kick the show up and was like, hey, do you want to do the show? And I thought he was asking me to produce the show because I have all the gear and the software and everything to do it. So I was like, yeah, I'll do your podcast, you know? And so he was like, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to be over then, you know, a little bit later on. So about 10 minutes before he's supposed to show up, he hits me up. He's like, all right, man, you got your talking points together? And I was like, wait, am I on the show? I thought I was producing this show. I do not have any talking points together. I will get right on that. And then Dave showed up. We did the podcast, and the rest is history.
That was a fun episode too. That was Bad Faith Daryl.
Bad Faith Daryl.
That was Bad Faith Daryl.
Love
Yeah,
that
I do
episode.
remember that. Because that's the episode I listened to in the car with my mom.
Yeah. That was a very sweary one too. A good introduction to us. That one is still a top 10 episode, actually. Like right now, like 6 of our last 15 are in the top 10 because our listenership's blowing up. But like, it's nice to see Bad Faith Daryl still up there and going strong. And I guess on the 50th episode point, big thank you to Johnny Flores, who was really helpful to me, the podcast consultant early on when I was trying to figure out how to do this. Then, of course, Anthony Sino, who started the first iteration of this and did the first, I want to say 23, 22 episodes. And they are some really, really good stuff. Totally different style, and any listener who hasn't gone back to listen to those, I highly recommend it.
Yeah. And
Shannon and Flo, I mean, I guess we can talk more on your 50th episodes, but
we have a long way to go.
Shannon's not too far.
Mine is
Shannon came in
is 80. Episode 80 is my 50th.
Oh, okay. So you were only 6 episodes after. I think I'm a ways away from my 50th episode.
I think you might be episode 90 or something.
You think it's only 10 episodes after Shannon started?
Well, we were only doing once a week.
Oh,
yours is episode.
That's
yeah,
true.
Yours is episode 40.
Mm-hmm.
So
I wasn't even on that episode. I was out east.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right.
Getting in danger of getting locked down during the virus shutting everything down.
Yep.
Sweet.
Love that.
Well, cool. That's exciting. I'm glad we got to toast to that.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, you guys want to do episode 74?
Let's do
I
it.
can't wait.
Shannon is so ready.
Voices, the things they said. Voices, some from those dead. All the voices heard. Voices, things we say. Voices, they're in your head. All the voices heard.
Hello, everyone. You have Kempa.
And Skylar.
And Shannon.
And Flo.
2 episodes in a row without a guest, but I bet we'll have somebody lined up for Monday. But this one, I'm excited about this one because we get to talk about California's large adult son, Sheriff Scott Jones, our big boy.
He is a big boy.
He's our big boy. Yeah. And he's always getting up to no good, and he's got some antics. And that's starting, particularly with his social media. We've got to take away his social media privileges, I think.
Shit, yeah.
as his parents. So what can someone talk about what he's been doing?
Sure.
Well, oh, sorry.
Go for it, Shannon.
Okay. I'm so ready. He's been like hollering a bunch of bullshit. He made this a post on Facebook a couple days ago, talking all kinds of trash about defunding the police. And I mean, it's like, y'all listeners, you should probably go look at it because it's a mini essay about how folks who are calling for defunding the police, basically are terrible people.
And we don't have jobs.
And no one has jobs.
They don't have jobs.
There's only 12 of us, and we don't have
There's
jobs.
only 12. Right.
He said a couple dozen, didn't he?
Yeah, a couple dozen. Sorry, a couple
Yeah.
dozen. Okay, so yeah, and we don't have jobs, so that's
And
why we have
also,
time.
We're also nonsensical.
Mhm.
And he wants people to show up. Like, if you want your voice heard and your voice is pro-police, like, you need to email the Board of Supervisors, is what Scott Jones says.
Mm-hmm.
And 700 people did.
According to him, yeah.
Because according to him, he posted a thank you to them about 5 hours ago, saying he appreciated the 700 of you and more every hour that CC'd me on emails you sent to our county supervisors. Thank you for letting them see the sleeping giant of the silent but overwhelming majority.
He's definitely not a big lying large adult.
Yeah, dude.
He definitely is not.
And then there's a picture of like with police, without police, and the with police, the caption from Fox News is police officer saves choking 3-week-old baby. Like, I wish I was joking, and I'm just like there's no way that if this baby was actually choking, someone called the police and they were able to arrive in time. Like, so that means that, like, did the police choke this infant?
Yeah.
Or
Right.
I think maybe
they just happened to be there and administer CPR. But either way, like, it's just so. I mean, I'm glad this baby is alive. Like, I'm not making light of the fact that this baby was choking. I'm just saying, like, of all the headlines to pull, that is not a representative, like, cross section of all the work they do. And then the without police.
Wait, hang on real quick. I want to float the theory here that maybe the issue with this Chiron is that saves is a typo. Maybe the correct headline is police officer choking 3-week-old baby. And then kind of a picture of that.
Who knows? But without police is also another baby story. And it's 1-year-old child killed in a day and night of Brooklyn gun violence.
Oh,
it took somebody a day and a night to kill a 1-year-old child with a gun?
I don't even know. But apparently, if you would like to invest in the babies, all of the babies, don't bother funding Black Child Legacy, which reduced the Black infant mortality rate by 45% in a matter of years. Don't bother to invest in the many programs that we have and services that provide, support for youth, especially youth right now who are struggling with mental health because they're being cut off from their support networks. What you need to fund is the police, because apparently the police are out here saving babies, and if you don't fund them, then the babies are dying by day and night. Dead.
Yeah.
By day and night, though.
Day and night.
Scott Jones promises your baby will die.
Baby is gonna die if you don't.
If you don't fund the police.
This line in his statement that says, since a couple dozen folks can take the day off and attend a Board of Supervisors meeting to call for defunding the police, you can readily assume that the rest of the 1.5 million folks in Sacramento County want to keep their policing intact.
That makes no sense.
You can readily assume it. He's the sheriff, and that's what he said.
I suppose you can.
Yeah, you can readily assume that is extremely true.
I have a lot of faith in people. I know that is what makes me a Pollyanna. And so I believe that what he is saying feels true to him because, so many people's response to defund the police was like, who will answer when I call 911. But I think when you respond to people that defunding the police doesn't mean that you defund all of your emergency services. It means that you start with prevention and then you decide what things can't be prevented or what things may not be prevented as you're investing, and you make sure somebody's there to respond, but that somebody doesn't have to have a gun. That most reasonable people with solidly functioning brains go, that makes sense to me, and I like that idea. I think most people, of the 1.5 million people in the county, most of them don't know how much money goes to the sheriff's department. They don't They don't have a basic understanding of what is possible. The number of people who I've shared actual data with about how much of crime is preventable and have said to me, I didn't know that, is not astonishing, but it's just like, there's a way in public health that we always operate, which is informed consent. And it doesn't just mean somebody says yes, it means that they know what they're saying yes to. Right. And so it is really disconcerting to me to hear somebody use these talking points knowing full well that most people go along with having police because they don't know anything else, and they don't even know that nobody has ever done any actual empirical research to study, are they even helpful? Mm-hmm. And because we can't, because there's no place in our country that just does not have police. So even when we study the impact of restructuring them, of, doing it differently, of having fewer of them, there is no place where we can just say, if you weren't there, is this better than nothing? Right. And that's how we start all medical research. We start not with, well, should we keep giving you Tylenol because we always have? We start with, is giving you Tylenol better than a placebo?
Right.
So I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for somebody to show me where having police is objectively a good based on how much we spend on them and based on what the outcomes would look like if they didn't exist and all the things that we're arguing for did.
My thing is, I think I've said this on the show before, but it's obviously there's 1.5 million examples, and a million examples since George Floyd, and the reaction to it was people protesting nation and worldwide, being okay, police brutality is way out of control. It has to stop. And the police respond by just brutalizing the shit out of every protester in every city that they can get their fucking hands on, right? And you would think that at some point, I've said this I think on the show before, but it's can we let's just try a different thing for a while, and if it's not better, then we can go back to a bunch of racist psychopaths with guns and shields and absolutely no consequences for their actions. We'll go back to that if it's not better, but let's just try the prevention thing and try to do a different thing for a while. And if it sucks and we want to throw money that should be spent on education or kids in vulnerable neighborhoods, we want to instead take that money. It is better spent on tanks and military equipment to roll around their neighborhoods with, then we'll do that. But let's try to do the other thing one time and just see how it goes.
Yeah. It struck me. Go ahead, Shannon.
This whole so in his statement, he talks about instead of defunding the police, let's continue to talk about how we can be better and more responsive to all our communities and, blah, blah, blah. And it's bro, people have told you, there are plenty of ideas about how you could be better. And it is by being less responsive because the sheriff and police are dangerous to people in our community. Dear Scott Jones, you actually don't give a shit, so you can go fuck yourself.
My dear big boy, Scott
But
Jones.
as they say, now what about who will solve all of these murder and rape cases?
All I keep asking is who's solving them now? Because most of them go unsolved. It's the same question that comes up when, prison abolitionists will have this conversation and people will say, but what are you going to do with all the murderers and rapists? And the answer is, do you know how many people who have committed sexual assault and are walking free? Because it's most of them.
Yeah.
Like,
hey, well, let's
serving
let's
time
get it.
for a
Yeah,
rape
let's get
charge
into
is
it.
incredibly rare.
Flo,
right?
let's jump into that right now then. So
Yeah, like,
Raheem Hosseini at Sacramento News and Review wrote a piece this week, basically outlining just how fucking terrible Scott Jones and his deputies are at their jobs.
Terrible.
Like, not even just
remember this. This is the response when your fucking like relatives and your friends are like, but who will solve all the rapes and the murders if we get rid of the cops? This
apparently
is your
not the
counterpoint.
cops. Yeah.
Apparently
they're not doing it now.
Families will solve these because if we're really and Ancestry.com will solve these and a bunch of it because the Golden State Killer was not solved by Anne-Marie Schubert. It was solved by Ancestry.com and they're really lax privacy laws.
Tune in next week for that one.
Dave, what are the numbers exactly?
Yeah, everyone, let me throw out the numbers there.
Before we really climb all over the Sac County Sheriff's Department for doing such a bad job, Dave.
Right.
What do the numbers look like? What were the numbers in 2019 as far as cases that got solved? Let's start with forcible rape because that's
let's first begin with the terminology. There's something called a crime being cleared, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a crime being cleared means that the law enforcement agency found somebody to charge with that crime.
Correct.
So that doesn't even always mean that person will be convicted of the crime. This is just the percentage of people that law enforcement charged for a crime that did not go uncharged. In 2019, to Skylar's question, this is according to State Department of Defense data, forcible rapes, only 9.3% of them cleared.
Correct.
Another way to think about that is that 90.7
that's 1 out of 11 rapes
fucking walked off with
and
it.
their high for this was 2018 when they cleared 24.6, but on average
not even a quarter.
On average they are somewhere between their low in 2016 of 2.6 to somewhere along the lines of anywhere between like 14 to 18% is I think where we would kind of end up for like a median amount of a median assessment of their performance.
By the way, I think these numbers tell you a lot about the culture of Scott Jones' department.
Correct.
In particular.
Absolutely.
This is one of the worst by far in the state on clearing rape cases. In the last 3 of the last 4 years, let's read these stats. 2016, 2.6% of forcible rapes. 2017, 5.8%. 2019, 9.3%. He is remarkably bad at his job. And when he asks for money, our board of supervisors say, yes, sir. How much?
According to the News and Review article, it says SAC News and Review was unable to find another law enforcement agency with a worse record when it came to investigating sexual assaults.
Yeah. And let's look at a couple of other of these, right? So out of all violent crimes, they only cleared 38%. So that's not even 2 out of every 5.
Correct.
What are they fucking doing with their time? What are these fucking people doing with their time? Are they choking baby? Are they saving choking babies?
I think that, yes. And that's why all this violent crime is happening. Right. If people would fucking have their fucking babies not be choking all the time, the cops would be able to respond to these violent crimes and clear some of these.
So for the record, because I'm a nerdy person, I just did the quick math. So my median was correct. Their median is between there are 10 years that are shown here. So the median is between 14 and 18.3%. But the average that they've done over this 10-year period is 4.2%.
That's wild.
That's embarrassing.
Their average is being driven significantly down by the last 4 years when Scott Jones was our sheriff, because those have the record low years of 2.6, 5.8, and 9.3.
This man is uniquely bad at his job.
He fucking
It's true.
sucks.
So
Dude,
maybe-
you fucking suck, dude.
Right. So maybe don't talk to me about how we need police to be able to solve the rapes and murders, because they're not being solved
You're not
right
doing
now.
it.
And a lot of the progress that is made in these cases is because families of victims make it their business to go
Right.
out and collect data, to collect evidence, and to constantly harass these law enforcement agencies to
Right.
get some justice in these cases, not because they are out here doing this work on their own.
Yeah. So robberies in the county, guess what percent of those on average in the last 3 years cleared? I guess we all have it in front of us.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
all
I'm
looking
looking,
at it.
I'm
around
looking at it.
20,
So
It's usually around 22%.
Yep.
yeah.
So that's
Sick. That's good.
barely 1 in 5.
I think the
With,
more
with
I
a
think the
low
cooler
in
way-
2016 of 13%. I just want to point out, like, in the last 4 years, we've had record lows on forcible rape,
That's
and we've
nearly
had
1 in
record
8.
lows on robbery clearances. I just want to.
I
throw
want
that
to
out
just
there.
point out that it's like one thing to say that they cleared 22% of these. I think it's a cooler way to say that they did not clear 78% of them.
Yeah.
Right.
78%
Well, in this case,
of people who
87%
committed
of them.
robberies
Yeah.
that are on file completely got away with it. Like no
Correct.
problem.
Correct.
Aggravated assault, they've never crested 50%. The last year was 46.6%.
And that's
So-
better than these are, but you're still more likely to get away with an aggravated assault than you are to be charged with one by the Sac County
Right.
Sheriff.
So that's telling you again, what are they doing? Because
The only thing they seem
they're not
to
solving crimes.
Yeah, the only thing they seem to like consistently spend their time on is homicide, which again, I go back to if I have to consider what my priority would be in terms of, what happens after the crime, my priority would be the rape and the robbery and the assault, because the homicides, like in that case, you're finding justice for these families, and that is important. They want to know what happened, and we should respect the victims. But let's be honest here. I say this all the time. Like, justice for me is not being murdered in the first place, not you solving my murder.
Right.
But that seems to be the only thing that they've ever gotten above 40% on or 50% on of these crimes is their homicide rate, which sometimes they've been as high as 90%, but they've also been as low as 38% of those as well. And if we're comparing, the 10-year period, like Scott Jones' time has again seen record lows in clearances of the homicides. 2016, 38.1, 2017, 59.4. Like, these are much lower than we've seen in the years that came before, and certainly in the beginning of the I guess it's not the aughts anymore, it's the teens. Is 2010 start the teens?
I think it's the teens.
I don't know English very well,
I
but
don't know.
the beginning of the teens, the tens, the tens.
God.
I don't know.
Can you imagine?
on from that.
2010, what a fucking year that was. If I go back in a fucking time machine and be like, all right, here's the key points that are happening in 2020.
Oh God. I'd be like, yeah, no, count me out.
I'd be like, suicide booth.
Yes. I do not want to live on this planet anymore. I want to add an asterisk.
I'm leaving now.
I want to add an asterisk to the homicide rates. These often get bumped up due to clearances of cold cases. So you look at the 2019 numbers, and that's a whole lot of perhaps Golden State Killer deaths from the 70s and 80s that get thrown onto there too. Some counties on some years will have up to 116% clearance rate in homicides. So, this is thank you Ancestry.com for doing the Sheriff's Department's job once more.
Right.
Well, that's kind of one of the main points about Jones, right? That pisses everybody off is that we're joking around like, what are these guys doing? But we really don't know what the fuck they're doing because Scott Jones resists any kind of oversight in any way and will illegally block people. I'm like, can somebody run the details of how that went by me again? Because I'm a little hazy on it. Him locking that inspector out of his office and getting him in trouble.
Yeah, the inspector, who, by the way, was not some outside force. He was former Sacramento Police Department Chief Rick Brazil. So we're not talking about somebody who was not part of the, policing in the deepest way. We're talking about another person who headed a department in this county. But go on about how his recommendations were completely asinine.
Yeah. And he's done all sorts of things over the years too. He is resisting body cams because he doesn't want to see the public. He doesn't want the public to see his deputies murdering people and beating people.
Right.
There's
whatever
been
else they're doing.
A lot of very mysterious deaths of somebody that was in the back of a sheriff's vehicle and who just died. And they claimed that they kicked out a window and jumped out. Bullshit. Fuck you. Bullshit. So then there is, they always try to block you when you request misconduct records, even though the AB 392 makes it so you have to share those. But they will make you lawyer up almost 100% of the time in order to get those files. Scott Jones is, I don't think I can stress how low he is as a human being. He is one of the worst people imaginable in this country, and he's in a place of power. So one thing I'd like people to remember is the Board of Supervisors is actually looking at a movement to move the sheriff's and DA's vote to presidential years. Now, the implication there is that in presidential election years, more people are politically engaged, which means more voter enfranchisement, higher voter turnout. And when that happens, the more left-leaning people win. So we should get deeply behind this push.
And I really hope that this push will make a big difference. I'm just really concerned because there are a lot of, police supporting Democrats in the county in particular. I've served on the Sheriff's Outreach Community Advisory Board for several years now, since I think 2016. And we don't get a whole lot. I mean, we have an opportunity to have conversations once a month or every other month, essentially, with the sheriff. But we don't get a whole lot of information. And most of the people who sit on that committee are bootlickers. They're like, oh, I came here to thank the sheriff for showing up to my event in the community. I came here to thank the sheriff for this, that, and the other. They are largely uncritical. And again, I don't know if that's in part because of just a level of ignorance, or if it's in part because a level of privilege. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless,
I think that's it.
I worry that without a strong counter narrative, especially in the county, I think the city is paying a little more attention. I think the city is a little more progressive. But I think if we start looking at what makes up the county, a lot of those folks will show up and show out for law enforcement. And I think we have some time, obviously, to change that. But I just want to say that on the record, it's going to take some serious re-education, because the socialization runs deep there, and there's a lot of just uncritical allegiance to the sheriff in particular.
Can I put on my sweet summer child hat?
Please, because this is a weird role reversal.
Yeah, I don't like it when you're not Pollyanna. This is a first step, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's a very important step. And I don't think anyone's saying that'll get them out. That's it, right?
Yep.
Also, county data from last week shows that Sacramento County is in a blue shift. And it is currently, Democrats are beating Republicans by 20 points with voter registration. And then no party preference voters hover around 22, 23%, which is kind of a similar number to where Republicans are. NPP voters tend to lean left, particularly new ones, who are more Latino and usually super young. So there is a little silver lining. The second part there is, I think even if you are a bootlicking Democrat, which many of them are, you still might agree that Scott Jones is a piece of shit. So if somebody can present a strong candidate against him or against DA Anne-Marie Schubert, I think there is, there's a chance, a fighting chance.
I was going to say, like, I think one of the things I would push back on your sweet summary moment here by saying that, like, while it is true that Democrats are like running the game in Sacramento and California in general, it is also true that all the people who in city leadership who are consistently making really shitty decisions are all Democrats, right? Like, yeah. I mean, Steinberg.
Not so much at the county, but definitely at the city.
But yeah, right? But like as far as like city council and all that goes, these are largely Dems. So it's not as easy as just being like, okay, cool, the left will win the election and then everything will be good. It won't be like it was, and our city leadership is proof positive of that.
Yeah, I mean, we've been on the losing side for a long time as socialists, right? But where we are right now is we take wins when we get them, when we get Katie into office, right? And then we sort of see how far left we can push whatever politicians we're able to get in. And then we just browbeat the shit out of the weak Democrats once they're in. I mean, that's kind of where, because when Scott Jones is in office, there's no fucking talking to this person. He is just like, he's crawling out of the he's MAGA.
He's like full on MAGA, right?
All the way down to hell, right? Like he is just not a good person. And were we to have somebody else in an office like that, they might be more malleable, right?
Yeah, I mean, they would have to. There's got to be somebody. I'm hesitant to like get real optimistic about it because whoever it is going to be a fucking career cop, right? But like, they can't. I mean, dude, Scott Jones is like, is very, very bad, right? Like, there's got to be some career cop who's not like as like monumentally a piece of shit is this fucking guy. Dude, I'm looking at his fucking picture on this website right now, and it's making me furious. This doughy motherfucker. Same. He looks like he's fucking getting ready to ask me if he can have a juice box. I'm going to say no.
I mean, I clearly can't be the Pollyanna today because I'm just like, I am so... Some days I just sit back and think about how hard it is to lose so much and to maintain like just the energy to keep fighting, but it's exhausting. And it's just like, I don't know if I'm like deep in my feelings about like being a Black woman today and just how fucking exhausting it is to watch white mediocrity on display on a regular basis and to have to like not just contend with it, but to watch it like get a platform and win in this way that is just, it's infuriating. And like you almost have to have a bit of like cognitive dissonance to just ignore it in order to be able to get up and keep moving every day. Because otherwise you just cry into your Cheerios every morning. Like people elect Scott Jones and pledge allegiance to him.
He's big with the MAGA crowd. I went to the Board of Soups meeting when they were doing that thing right after he locked the inspector out. And like everybody who was there in support of him, like there were straight up just like MAGA hats and like people in Trump t-shirts and shit. He supported base.
He is known for that that immigrant detention center contract
with ICE.
Right, with ICE. Like that's how
evil.
I mean, that is
full
not the
evil.
only way that he received support from the MAGA crowd, but it certainly was like a nail in the coffin for those fuckers.
To Flo's point, I think it's okay that this is your episode where you are in this headspace. I don't think many people in this town would disagree that you've been one of the strongest fighters on this police issue, not just this year, but you know, you've been around. Last year you were actively working on multiple fronts, and yeah, it totally makes sense. And then I sit here and I look at the other woman of color on our show, Shannon, who is just fucking exhausted from a week of providing emergency services to a homeless community when the need is so much greater than anyone can possibly do. And Shannon, I thanked you earlier for helping a friend of mine with the family that she was trying to help this week. But like, yeah, I guess I don't know what else to say other than like, yeah, you're fucking right.
Yeah, it is something. And this, I think, you know, we've addressed this on the show before, that this show really serves as a space, one, where we can bring news, information, and hot takes to the community, but it also serves as a cathartic experience for the four of us.
Yes.
And certainly, I think this is a place, and I know Flo is like no filter in terms of where you're at and how pissed off you are, rightly so. But it's always the, like, I think a conversation like this, when we are talking specifically around the sheriff and police, and in particular the villain lead of the sheriff, who over and over and over again has tried to gaslight and silence Flo and the people that she gathers around to speak against him. Like, of course, like, also, of course you would be feeling all of the feelings, and it is like 100% appropriate. Not that you need my validation, but like, it's complete and utter bullshit that people like you fight so, like, and in a way that people want you to, which is intellectually, right? Like, you come with data. It's not like you don't show up with all feelings all the time, which is the way that white people have villainized Black people as being too angry. Like, you show up fierce in speech and with data, and they still tell you that you're dumb, and they still tell you that they're not going to listen to you, and they still tell you that they are trying everything in their power to make change. It's complete bullshit, and people need to remember a good job. Like,
Right.
we have this article from SNR that shows what the fuck are we paying these people for? Like, I can give them Flo from her working position, I from my working position can give you hard data for how that much money, how less money is being used to serve the community in tangible ways, that we're making actual change for people. We are protecting people because health and safety is what we do. Like, it.
Well, what's the percentage of the total county budget that goes towards public safety?
Are we talking city or county?
County.
I want to
71% of general fund in the county goes to law enforcement, incarceration, and courts.
Do you have it written down right there how much money that is?
To the sheriff's department specifically, I have $277 million in a year.
But I think including the jail, it's $400 million.
Yeah,
it's $400 million.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
and then
completely outrageous. Just think about all the fucking social services we have that are underfunded, all the people, all the places and people and programs that need funding, that don't have funding and get told time and time again that there's just no money for it. There's no funding available for it. And then now think about Scott fucking Jones, like 90% of fucking like rape cases that don't get solved, and he's getting $400 million a year to fucking do it. To do fucking what? Fuck this dude. And fuck
Also,
the county for fucking giving them all this goddamn money. It's fucking ridiculous.
And also his jails are famously
Deplorable.
among the worst
Horrifying.
in our nation, which is among the worst nations in the world.
Correct.
So this is your sheriff, guys.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing that I think, and I don't know if our listeners necessarily need to hear this because maybe you already know, but let's not forget that Scott Jones and his folks have hidden time and time again from transparency, and oftentimes have been sort of elusive in making public comment about things. Meanwhile, you have people like Flo who will work a 20-hour day if necessary on half a meal to get the news out there and to make sure that there is complete transparency and that all of the numbers are broken down, and that the fight, like, who are the people that you actually want protecting our community? It's people who give a shit about public health, safety, housing,
For real.
real. Harm reduction services for trans folks, services for queer folks, like, because really those are the people that are going to show up, and they're not going to complain that our paychecks at the end of it are like $7 an hour because we give a shit. And yes, we should be making more, but
Why don't we move on to a solution here then, right?
Yeah.
And this podcast, people listen all over the state and in different states. But what we want is for
Hi, Agent
Sacramento to be
Hi.
we want to tell you the Sacramento story, but which is also the story of your town and your county. And so, like, look into your sheriff's behavior and your police department's behavior, and also look at some of the great ideas that some people have been coming up with. One of them being the people's budget here in Sacramento.
Yeah.
Who would like to speak on that? Flo?
I'm happy to.
I would like to, Flo.
It's the best part of having Flo on the show is it's like, there's a budget that's good. Flo, you must be involved somehow. Can you please tell us about this?
So this is the brainchild of Sacramento City Council member-elect Katie Valenzuela. There are a bunch of folks that are involved. In fact, I thought it was kind of laughable that it was a couple dozen people took off, because it's more like a couple dozen organizations are already behind this. And big credit to the People's Budget LA, which is a project of Black Lives Matter, for putting together such a comprehensive version of this for Los Angeles. And with having this changing of the guard, and Katie coming in really being the people's, she will be the people's representative in so many ways, because everybody in the city is looking to her for leadership, even though she only represents District 4. Or I should say she officially represents District 4, because she's representing so many more people beyond that. And so, this has come out as a way to be able to actually ask people how would they like the money to be spent, and then be able to submit official recommendations for what a budget looks like that reflects the people that you are supposedly governing. And so the next steps on this, it's been announced, and there are ways to follow on social media, on Twitter and on Facebook right now. The website is coming, we promise, that will have way more information on it. And also there will be some polling. I was looking for that today. Yeah, there will be some polling that's coming. We didn't get to it at the meeting yesterday, so we're gonna be talking about website coming up on Friday. But there's some really, really fantastic people from across the city who are working on this, and are gonna be thinking about it both in terms of the city and the county, and how do we ask these questions? How do we actually, the city of Sacramento, by comparison to the county, looks good. But I always remind us not to rest on our laurels, because the city is not doing well. It's just not under the same leadership as the county, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so yes, it looks better. And yes, the city on its face asks some questions about how to spend the money. But I have always a really critical eye on what those questions actually are, and do they represent the full range of what you're going to spend money on? Because if you don't ask questions well, it's like informed consent. You need to be informed in order for it to actually be consensual. And some of the ways that they ask the questions, like during a pandemic, they ask, would you like for money to be spent on police, fire, and, healthcare services? Who during a pandemic is going to say no to that when you put them all together?
You roll them all in together, right?
But if you actually ask separately, if you actually talked about what those funds are spent on, people will answer differently. When you ask people, did you want this money to be spent on, emergency response or prevention? When people realize prevention is an option, they often choose that. So there are some ways that the people's budget is going to go about even asking the questions that get to the root of what do people really need, what do people want to see more of, and what do they want to see less of, to increase that advocacy, because the budget is one of the hardest and most opaque pieces of legislation that exists at every level of government.
Mm-hmm.
The higher up you go, the more transparency there is, and I'm putting that even in air quotes for the YouTube viewers, because the transparency is largely because other organizations will translate parts of the budget so that, and because there are just so many more people paying attention, the bigger
Right.
the government is,
Like on a federal
you
or
have
state
more
level.
of that. Exactly. You have more organizations coming together to do that work, but it is always challenging to know where the money is going and to be able to influence that. And so this is a really important policy task, because everything else follows from it.
Can I ask, is there any framework yet for what the people's budget will look like, or will that be a result of the polling?
That will be a result of the polling. That will also be a result of research, right? So, again, this is a group that's not just going to say, well, this is how we've always done it, or, this is the way that things just have to be. We're going to be asking, like, based on how people answer, what are some of the responses? What are some of the ways in which we could spend this money to reflect that, that have some research behind them, that have some evidence behind them? And even if that evidence is just promising practices, because we also recognize that the status quo was just done. It has no research behind it. So even in looking and being able to have a framework for why we spend the money this way, will be leaps and bounds ahead of how we already do it.
Great. 2 questions. 1 question, 2 parts. A, can you name some of the orgs who are a part of this? Because I know there are some pretty impressive orgs that are a part of this push. B, can you tell people what their next steps are for how they can get plugged into this?
Absolutely. So I will start with the second one while I try to pull up the people's budget, so that, because I don't want to leave anyone out, and I want to make sure I do this as best I can. Okay, so the ways to get involved are Facebook. Facebook, it's the People's Budget SAC, and then Twitter, I believe it's the same, People's Budget SAC. And so go ahead and like those pages, or follow the account on Twitter, so that you can get up-to-date information on what's been happening, and even the event that already happened to launch it at the county board of supervisors. Then in terms of the organizations that are involved, there are a lot. I know this list is not exhaustive, but everything from Build Black, Justice to Jobs, Anti-Police Terror Project, Public Health Advocates, Sunrise, Decarcerate Sacramento, Trauma Through a Traumatized Perspective, and All of Us or None, California Urban Partnership, United Way, Surge, which is showing up for racial justice. Mm-hmm. And there are a ton more organizations. Those are just the ones that even I was able to find logos for in our Google Drive. But there are a lot more organizations that are involved. I'm looking to see if I see anyone else.
Don't hold it against Flo if she didn't name you.
Yes. Building Healthy Communities is another one. Sacramento for Real Rent Control.
I think that's good.
Solidarity of Unhoused People. ACE. Trying to make sure. Sacramento Tenants Union.
Okay, I feel now I'm regretting asking the question.
I mean, it's just like Sacramento Working Families. Like, there are so many organizations that are involved. And yeah, I mean, just because, you know, leaving people out always hurts people's feelings. But I think I have a lot of them involved, and just so many great people from across the city and county that are involved in doing this work. You know, we're just, you know, public health advocates. I mean, we're all trying to just join together and make this happen and collaborate in a way that's really meaningful and important.
Yeah, and I think there will be time to really, you know, give everybody their light on this push. But it's an impressive fucking push.
Yeah.
So listeners, tune into that and stay tuned for what comes next there. We've got a few minutes left. Can we briefly touch on what's happening on the other side of the Sacramento River?
Wait a minute. I was going to say this, right? I mean, this is when we were talking about Scott Jones earlier. I feel like we went off a little hard. Surely there are some good cops, right? Like, surely, and if a cop were to see his colleagues or take notice that his colleagues were doing something bad or even illegal, and he would report them and work to stop them from doing that, that's a good cop, right? And surely the department would appreciate that sort of energy being brought to it, especially in West Sacramento. Dave, can you confirm that is how it works for me with the West Sacramento Police Department?
First of all, I think this is an episode where one of us gets to say to another, I don't know, it kind of sounds like you like cops a little bit.
I was actually going to ask Skylar if he had started doing yoga.
I actually believe that there are people who go into this profession wanting to do good and really committing to that. And I also am of the firm belief that those people often get sidelined and pushed out. And I'm going to use our new OPSA director, Letitia Watson, as an example of that, of like, she has probably been kicked out of more places than she's been invited to, because she, similarly to what's happening in West Sac, has really stood up and tried to change things. And I think that speaks to the toxicity of the culture of policing, that the people who actually are trying to do some good have to keep finding new ways to do good because they get kicked out, because that's not acceptable. And that's the thing that I want to drive home for people, is that
the thing is rotten at its roots.
Bad apples, but they kick out the good apples so they can rot everybody else to the core. And so you end up either being
at its root.
Yes, you end up either being a party by being complicit in it because you're unable to say something, or you end up getting kicked out. But you're either complicit or you get kicked out. Unfortunately, there's no middle ground on this. And that's the challenge, is that there's no middle ground.
Let's tell people, let's give them context to what we're talking about here.
Yes.
The former chief of police of West Sacramento Police Department, his name being Tom McDonald.
Yes.
Recently just put this was a B article written by a Harvard student intern, and it was a really good, exhaustive article, actually.
Yeah.
But so props to her. But so he's basically suing the city of West Sacramento, saying that he didn't in fact retire, but the city pushed him out because he wanted to look into some police reforms and the misconduct within the organization of West Sacramento Police Department.
Describe this guy misconduct, like, because it's police misconduct is very, very vague. Like, some of the shit that he was trying to look into is not vague.
No, well, he was hired actually in 2012 for the exact reason that West Sac PD was doing some really nefarious fucking shit. There was one cop who was arrested in 2012 who was kidnapping, and brought charges against them for kidnapping and raping multiple women.
While on the job.
I believe while on the job.
Yeah.
Yes. that same year, and not many people know this, but there was a guy named Kevin Huey, who's a big time lawyer here in Sacramento. Also, I think weirdly like works in the music industry. There, for some reason, the cops came to his home one night in 2012, busted into his front door, and shot him in front of his 9 months pregnant wife. And thankfully he survived. But this guy, I've always wanted to write a story on this, on sort of like a tale of
you
two
have been
cities.
wanting to write this story for a while, Dave.
On how Stefan Clark doesn't get this storyline, but Kevin Huey does, right? A white man on the other side of the river who had means, right? He took West Sac PD to the courts and did not let go. Because he's a privileged white guy who was also like, yeah, you came in my house and fucking shot me. And then actually the cops came and bothered him a year later when he fell off a ladder and his wife called 911. And for some reason, instead of sending paramedics, they sent the cops. And the cops, it's a small town over there, so the cops all knew him and what happened the year before. So he's laying on the ground telling them to leave, and they're like, they ended up like, apparently, according to the lawsuit, drew their guns on him and his wife. Like, just wild behavior.
Right.
Sick. Cool. Yeah. Great.
So anyway, long story short, he just settled with them last year with West Sac PD for $5 million. So West Sac residents enjoy paying that. Sorry, like, so I'm not sure exactly, were those the specific things you were talking about, Skylar?
Yeah. It was mostly the officer who had been charged for kidnapping and raping women, like while wearing that badge and wearing that gun.
Well, more recently in the last year or two was when he was like, you know what, we need to pull together like an entire like study on our own police department and see what's what here. Cause I still don't trust that, like, there's not something wrong. He wanted to fix it from within. Right.
Right.
And the police union pushed back, and effectively, I believe it's like the city manager or whatever they have over there.
Yeah. It's West Sac city manager.
Basically told him like, you're fired and please resign.
Yeah.
So you're fired and now you have to retire.
By the way.
Yeah. So this dude who is responding to like indefensible acts of like cruelty and violence against the people they're supposed to be serving and protecting. This guy was like, hey, we should like look into this and like kind of crack down on this so it doesn't happen anymore. Was pulled into a meeting with the city manager who asked him to resign because the cops were going to have a morale problem if they went through with that investigation.
I know that when I'm called out for doing something that isn't cool, my morale it dips. So he's not wrong,
Yeah.
It's not wrong.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
when I
punch somebody and they're like, dude, that hurt. And I'm like, hey, that really lowers my morale.
Right.
Yeah, you're really like fucking with my vibe, dude.
Yeah.
Like,
but so keep in mind Sacramento County people too. Like when you think about the city manager, Howard Chan, and his relationship with Sac PD, or the county CEO, Nav Gill, and his relationship, he works actively with Scott Jones, the sheriff, this evil fucking sheriff. So
I heard they do yoga together.
They do. And so think real hard about these relationships and on if real accountability is possible under this system, because all four of us here have moved well beyond that. And Tom McDonald of West Sacramento is one more example of many.
Right. It's not a bad apple thing like Flo was saying earlier. It's not like, oh, there's a couple of these guys who are doing bad shit. Right. It's not how it is. They're like the whole either you are actively being a fucking monster or you are complicit in allowing other people to be monsters and take advantage of the people that they're supposed to be serving and protecting. There is no like I don't know, man. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
This is like where the binary actually exists.
Mm-hmm.
It's you are
right.
This or this. That's it.
Well, and that's
So-
just on this level, right? I mean, I mean, we don't have time right now to get into like the fucking, like the way that the rest of the justice system operates, how it operates and why it operates in the way that it does. But this is just like part of it. These are the fucking foot soldiers, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, people should be pushing SAC PD to fire a woman named Sarah Stambaugh, who
Oh man, that one.
a recent film showed during a routine stop. She pulled her gun out on a Latino man as he was doing everything that he was told to do.
Like, and
She still has a job, and from what I heard, she's actually been promoted.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they fucking threw her a parade for that shit.
Yeah. I was like, why wouldn't she be?
These fucking monsters.
Fucking jerky ass cops.
That video has made it pretty far and wide.
I've been having a conversation with a former sheriff deputy who was really upset that I was quoted in the Bee as saying that it is appalling that we have state workers who have been essential, you know, during COVID and are getting a 10% pay cut, but that the people who killed Stephon Clark are getting another 3.5% pay increase this year. And I was just like, I stand by that. Like, I'm sorry.
Right. Like,
I don't know what else to tell you.
How dare you,
like,
Flo? How dare you?
I don't know what else to tell you.
Was this our NELP friend?
No.
Okay.
This is a former sheriff's deputy who, it's actually interesting. We've been having a decent conversation, but it was a very respectful email, but I was called naive and childish.
Yeah.
You know, when those two words are said, the first person I think of is you.
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, when Flo is carrying on 70 plus years of Black academics and sociologists and philosophers, how fucking naive.
Right. And childish, I would say.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that the real heroes are the police.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, guys, speaking of the real heroes, no, that's not a good one. I got better than that.
I was like, oh man, how is he going to pull that out?
I went into that before I thought.
We are the real heroes. That's how.
Yeah.
Boom.
And as the real heroes, you know, everybody listening to this show deserves to know where they can get more of our heroic, and I'm going to say perfect takes, consolidated down into one very easy to consume package. Can somebody help me out? Where would I go for that if I wanted to eat up those perfect takes?
Shannon, what do you think? I'm really racking my brains here, but I'm drawing a blank.
Shannon, you definitely have a lot of heroic takes, and I would love to know where I can listen to all of them.
Yeah, me too. And I know Tareen would as well.
I'm sorry, Tareen.
I think he might be good now. I think he's like, Tareen's never going to come to you and just be like, you're good. He's just going to be like, what's up, Shannon?
I've never met the man in person.
I know. So. That's what he's just like, what's up, Shannon? love you on the pod.
So I would say that a place that you can find many, many years worth of solid, perfect takes in various forms, be them extended versions of the original VRC podcast or community essays, including very sex positive perfect takes. You should probably head on over to voicesrivercity.com. It's a great spot to get started. And if you're down with that, then you should probably just like hop on over to Facebook at Voices River City. And then if you're more of a like, I like to listen to sort of just like quick, perfect, and funny takes, you might want to hop on over to Instagram at Voices River City. And really what's going to happen is you're just going to feel like full of just all of the positive vibes and perfection, and you will therefore be a better human. And if you love all of those experiences, or maybe if you only love one of them, Doesn't matter, wherever you find yourself on the spectrum of love for perfect takes. You might want to just like take a step back, pull out your debit card, and head on over to patreon.com/voicesrivercity. And like, you're not going to the bar right now because you really believe in public health and the best ways to keep your neighbors safe, so you're staying home. So you got an extra $5 a month for that, to support the perfect takes and not go to the bar.
Sure.
And you'll get some
This is
premium
reasonable.
perfect takes if you actually
you
do
get
that
the
too.
premium takes for that too.
Yeah, we the premium perfect takes are just like, you might even want to give us $1 squillion. I don't
They're
know.
real spicy.
Did I get them all? Did I get all the ways that you can find
I
the
think
perfect
you
take?
did.
Yeah,
Well,
that's more or
there's
less we're also on YouTube.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's right.
God,
so you can look at our pretty little faces on YouTube.
Ugh,
Then we're
don't
also
do it.
on Twitter at Voices River City. And then each one of us is on Twitter. I am at Kempo, YLUKNOWKEMPA.
I am guillotine for you. That's guillotine, the number 4, YOU.
Pardon me. I am Shan N.D. Stevens. What are you, Flo? Where are you at on Twitter?
Yes, I am Flojaune, FLOJAUNE.
Flo never stops working, even when she's recording the.
No, exactly. For real though, go check out if you like what you're hearing, check us out on Patreon. We do actually now offer premium content. If you offer it's at $25, we shoot some merch your way.
You get a shirt and a nice coffee mug.
Yeah, exactly. And even if you don't want to do
nice.
the Patreon thing, we have a store opening up pretty quick too, so you'll be able to do it that way as well.
Got a lot of new
Can't
merch
wait.
coming in.
If you
have
are,
White Claw koozies coming in.
Yeah, White Claw koozies, branded to Voices is a thing you can look forward to.
So proud of that merch idea.
If you are in a situation like mine where your employment is not as certain, it's not a big deal. Another thing that you can do for us that really helps us out is leave us 5-star review, leave us a nice review on Apple Podcasts, like us on YouTube. Also for you guys who like the show, but
button.
Yeah, smash the love button. If you are not in a financial situation where subscribing to a podcast is like an option for you, but you do want to hear the premium takes, no problem. Shoot us a message on any one of these social media platforms, and we'll hook you up with it. This part of the show will always be free, but really we want everybody to have access to everything we're doing. So that's the main drive.
And we said it before and we'll say it again to our Patreon supporters. Thank you. We've seen that spot grow, and we are just full
Thank you.
warmth and posy vibes. Thank you so much. It's
every month it's growing. It's nice.
Truly incredible.
It's really inspiring for sure.
I show up here because of you, Patreon supporters.
Yeah, Patreon supporters, you're giving Shannon a reason to not go to bed at 5 p.m. every night.
At least every Thursday, yeah.
By Thursday, I'm just like, look at these. But don't watch the YouTube clip on Friday morning, because you're gonna see the real.
Watch it for air dicks and bags.
Yes,
yeah.
So many.
Yeah, there they are. There's those dicks. All right, I think that's the show. Yeah,
I think that's getting weird now.
Patreon supporter or no, we love you. We want you to stay safe.
Yes, and also stay sane,
stay healthy,
and stay the fuck away from me.
It never gets old. It's
weekend,
so
everyone.
good.
It's the COVID sign off.
Have a good